Welcome to another Coffee with Samso, where we talk to ASX companies and CEOs about what they're doing and what the stories are like. Today, I've got James Marsh from Andromeda Metals coming back to talk to us about what they're doing in South Australia. It's been a while since we last spoke, and I'm pretty sure lots have happened. James, fire away. Let us know what's happening.
Yeah, hello, Samso. Nice to be back with you again. First time in 2021. No doubt this is going to be a very big year for Andromeda. You know, we got a lot happening, and a lot of major milestones that we're going to be hitting this year. So exciting times ahead, but also very busy times. And it's been a while since we released any news, not because we weren't doing much, it's just because we had so much going on over Christmas. We didn't stop the whole time through. And now it was a good time to give an update, because I checked the calendar today and we now have 268 days, working days left before we plan to be starting our operations. So when you think of it that way, it doesn't sound like very long.
No, especially, you know, time seems to fly a lot faster when we get older, James. So it's like an exponential move. Right?
It is, yeah. My lifespan's shrinking, so I want to get this done before I keel over. But you're right. There's no, we should hopefully be well before that happens. And as you might have seen in the announcement today, there are some very positive things happening, some great developments in our project. So
yeah,
now we're working very closely with the South Australian government at the moment, and part of that work we're doing towards getting our mining lease approval in. We managed to get the Great White Halloysite Kaolin project declared as a mine. That's part of the approval process. The important thing there was that they gave us a royalty determination of only 2%, which is reduction of 1.5% up until June 2026. So that's quite good, because in the scheme of things, that will save us about approximately $9 million, sorry, per on the project by having that royalty cut. So that's a big step forward. And the next step with the government is to get our application in. At this stage, we are looking at next month. So it's just around the corner now. So the application will go in during February. Then there's typically a 9-month approval process before we get mining approval. So potentially looking at October before we get mining approval. But we have been working so closely with the government all the way through that we're hoping we might be able to shortcut that a bit. We'll see how it goes. But during that time, we've also been working very hard on a definitive feasibility study. So there's a lot of work gone into that. There's been some new developments as we've moved forward over the last few weeks, last few months as well, which means we've been having a close look at what we put into our definitive feasibility study, because we have got a lot of options open to us. You know, in the scheme of things, you look at the project, you think it's quite a simple project. It's just an open cast mine. It's shallow. It's low impact, and it's a product, industrial mineral product. But now we've got these new opportunities coming through in different areas. It means that we've got a lot of opportunities here to optimize what we do. So the DFS is progressing, and part of the announcement was that we have brought in some extra help to get us through that. We've engaged Origin Capital, who are a very experienced outfit in working through DFSs through to bankable feasibility studies. So they're helping us now with that. We've also taken on some more staff, more people who joined Andromeda in different areas, because this time next year we'll be gearing up for operations. So it'll be a very different company. Now we need to have a lot of systems in place and all the things that go on behind becoming an actually operating, producing company. So there's a massive amount of work going into that as well. In the announcement, we also mentioned that we've engaged Primero, who will be doing our engineering, procurement, and construction for our project. That's very important, because they'll be instrumental in taking the whole plant design through to the final stages, the bankable stages of the feasibility study. So that's also a big step forward. So focusing just on the Great White project, see there's a whole lot of things happening here, a lot of pieces falling into place here now, to make sure that we get through this year and meet our deadlines.
James, maybe just to help us understand where you guys are. Obviously, you're not exploring. As you mentioned, you're gearing up for mining status. From your DFS going to your bankable, can you just give us an idea what the difference mean, what each stage mean? Because obviously, in my opinion, I think what you guys got is fairly simple process. So how much difference would a DFS be to a BFS?
Well, the DFS will give us all the numbers that we need, and we'll release those numbers to the market once they're available. That will give us the outline of the project. Now, as part of our joint venture with Minotaur on this project, we are committed to going to a bankable feasibility study stage. So that's the reason we're going towards working towards a BFS. And what that does, that means we have to take the whole project up to a level that it's de-risked enough for a bank to provide finance for the project. Now, we're not saying we need all finance for the project, bank finance. No, it might be a mix of debt finance and equity finance. We're in a very strong position to raise all the money we need via equity, because it's actually, compared to our market cap, the amount we need is quite low. But for the joint venture, we are working through a bankable feasibility study so we can make the right decisions. That means that a lot of the aspects have to be ticked off at a very, very high level of confidence. So, but like you said, it is a relatively simple project. So we're not designing and building anything new here. This is going to be conventional technology. It's off-the-shelf technology for the plant. It's a very easy mining process, very simple. So nothing complicated. But the issue for us, I suppose, is when you go to debt financing from a bank, banks don't really understand industrial minerals very well. So minerals like us, like we have, halloysite kaolin, they've probably never come across before. So if it was a gold project, now they can look at the gold price. There's a market there. It's all very clear. And quite typically, they would a gold project would sign up all of their output to one end customer. So for us, this situation is different. Now we have an opaque market, which means that we will have a mineral that is worth different amount of money to different customers depending on how they use it. We know what the baseline number is, and that was published in our pre-feasibility study. But we have to lock in all these different customers with all different agreements, and the bank has to be confident that those customers are genuine, they're creditworthy, and the agreements we have in place will stand up to scrutiny. So that's ongoing at the moment. We have got, as you know, a lot of non-binding offtakes with customers, but they were mainly in China. So the other thing we're doing now is we are de-risking the project further by extending those offtake agreements. We're looking at offtake agreements around the whole world now. So we still have a base load in China, which we will be converting across to binding offtakes. But we're now looking at a whole host of different countries where there are very healthy markets for our mineral, and there's definitely interest for our mineral. So over Christmas, we were finishing the production of about 6 tons of product, our final product that we're fixed on now, which is going to be the premium product for porcelain. And that material is now being sent out around the world for testing with these various mixture of end customers and distributors around the whole world.
In terms of products, you mentioned you used the word premium. Do I take premium as high grade or premium as in quality of the brightness and things like that?
Yeah, so when I say premium there, I meant we are targeting the premium end of the ceramics industry for our main base load of business. So this means the porcelain end, which they want, and for that they do want very high quality halloysite kaolin. So the halloysite is a vital component. It has to be a certain level, otherwise it doesn't work in these applications. But they also want low levels of impurities, so things like iron, which cause discoloration, titanium, which causes a loss of translucency. So there's a whole lot of factors involved in there, and they want to make sure the crucial thing for them is that we have the right specifications for our product, we have the right amount of halloysite in there, and we have a very consistent ore body reserve that can supply that material in exactly the same form for a very long time. So we're talking about 5-10 years. So they don't want someone that can just supply, you know, a few months of production and then suddenly it changes. So we're very lucky that our resource is very extensive. You know, our total resources across the whole area now are over 100 million tons, and we are very lucky that this is extremely consistent material. So they want these customers, there's a world shortage of this halloysite kaolin, and so timing for us is excellent. It means that we can slot into these areas where customers now are actually failing to actually source this material because it's not available. So we've got a lot of things on our side here where we're moving towards getting these binding offtakes, we're in a strong position because we know that once they've tested our material, they like it. Then we convince them that we have got a long-term, very viable long-term supply here. Then we're in a strong position to actually get some good offtake agreements. And so not just in China, but Japan, rest of Asia, and now throughout Europe and even North Africa.
What's the timing and all this? I guess, when we first spoke, it's almost 2 years now. And obviously, even at that time, I felt, and when we discussed what you guys have, is that it's going to be a very short time period between, you guys deciding to go mining and the first truck off the mine site. Where are we at with this timing? I know you discussed it briefly earlier on, but, if you had to sort of, and I do understand everything is very, very flexible. Things change for whatever reasons, and they always do. So what is that sort of ballpark time frame that you wish for the path to production and selling, obviously?
Yeah, so that's very good question, because the timeline is crucial here. We have got a very short timeline into operations compared to typical mining projects. So we're lucky that because we've got such a simple model here that we can do it more quickly than you would normally expect. The timeline at the moment that we've actually announced was that we aim to be in production by the 2nd of February 2022. So our target date is 2222, which is supposed to be a lucky number in some places. But for us, that is our target. Now, the biggest factor in that is the actual approval process from the government. So the 9 months. So the 9-month approval process drops within that. Now, if that takes a bit less time, then who knows, we might actually get there a bit more quickly. But as I mentioned before, there's a very intensive process to work through to a bankable feasibility study. So there's a lot of questions have to be answered. And even with a simple project like ours, there's a whole mass of things that have to be done, a whole lot of critical items on our schedule. But we're confident at the moment that we're working towards that. As I mentioned before, we will get our application in for our mining lease next month. So that starts the clock ticking on that one, which is our longest, so as longest lead time for any milestone in the project. We're very well advanced on the geology. We've got no problems there. The mine scheduling is done. The environmentals are done. We just got them signed off. We've got a few little final details to be fixed there, but there's nothing major. So we've got nothing that's going to trip us up here. We just got a procedure we've got to get through. And if it all goes according to plan, then February 2022 is perfectly feasible. The marketing side there's no doubt that COVID has had a factor in this. Now, it's like most businesses in the world, especially if you're looking at international business, then you can't help to be affected by COVID somehow. So we've got people on the ground now. We've got a company called Conrad Partners we engaged to help with the Chinese side of the marketing, as I can't get there anymore. They're over there doing that for us. They're running around at the moment, but there are some unknown factors there. China is sort of randomly locking down cities all over the place, and there's a few other factors that occasionally slow things down. But the good news is that they are progressing well, and the way we're going now, that shouldn't actually affect our timeline at all. So at this point in time, we say we're looking at 268 days, working days left before we will actually break ground at the Great White mine site. So it's not actually long at all now.
So from a layman's point of view, I mean, I guess, you got DFS, BFS, and it's just, as you mentioned, it's a case of timing rather than potential technical issues in terms of your path to breaking ground. Would that be a safe assumption?
Definitely, yeah. I would say there's no new process, there's no new products here. Now, the product we are producing, we aim to produce and to sell, has been used in this market for 1,000 years. And that's no exaggeration. And the technology that's been used to process it, as we want to process, has been going for probably well over 100 years. So there's no rocket science there at all. It's just a process to go through. There's an administration and a bureaucratic process to go through, because to be a responsible miner now, you have to jump a lot of hurdles to make sure that we're not causing any ill effects to the environment. But also we have to prove that we are adding a lot of benefits to local communities. So that's all happening at the moment. And we're just working through that process. But in the background, we have got a lot of other things going on. So on top of the Great White Project, we've got Mount Hope, which is another very interesting resource there, about 18 million tons, but there's probably a lot more there. So we want to get back there and see how big that is. We've got areas in the Mount Hope resource, and also areas in the Great White of very high, or in fact super high purity kaolin. It's not the halloysite type, so it's no good for the ceramic application that we're aiming for, but it's so pure that I've never seen anything like it in 30 odd years, and nor have anyone else who's looked at it. So we're looking at that in some other applications, in very high value coatings applications. So we're doing some work on that, and samples have gone out to potential targets around the world. We've got a pilot plant that we've got going again, and we are knocking out some significant amounts of material from the pilot plant. And there we're looking at other things, like we're looking at those coatings, potential coatings application products, but we're now also working through our concrete application potential. We announced before Christmas that we'd passed the Australian standards for concrete use. So we're now pushing that one forward just to finish a commercial trial. Next stage is to get a commercial trial done, which will be final approval for the market use. That's all being well, that should be done this month. So that'll be another step forward. And on the concrete market, then we have to look at what do we do with that, because that wasn't in the pre-feasibility study, but it's potentially something that's much bigger, potentially much higher value, and easier to make. So that's another factor we've got to look at in the background. And also we've got a lot of work going on with our Natural Nanotech joint venture with Minotaur. This is in the halloysite technology used in nanotechnologies. So we've recently doubled our expenditure at the Global Innovation Center for Nanotechnology in Newcastle. That means now we have 18 different projects running there. And every single one of those projects could yield some very interesting intellectual property in new high-tech developing applications. And also it will help us to commercialize the carbon capture side of that. You might have noticed recently that Elon Musk has announced that he's going to award $100 million to the best carbon capture technology he can find. So, I think that something like that we're doing could be of interest to that. It's certainly some interesting carbon capture technology, and we will have a commercial pilot plant running as soon as we can at the university. So that's also going on. And the other thing is that we're doing is we've now made progress at our Camel Lake prospect. And Camel Lake has been widely known as the highest purity halloysite that's ever been seen anywhere in the world. It's pretty amazing stuff. But we've had a bit of a battle to try and get there, just to get gain the confidence of the traditional owners and convince them that we're the right company to do this and get involved. We now have done that, and we've had a clearance visit. So we took two helicopter loads of the traditional owners there for heritage clearance, and we'll get a report back this week if all goes to plan. And then next stage is to get our geologists there on the ground collecting samples in the cleared areas. So, if we get a resource of that halloysite there, that is a very exciting material, because it is absolutely perfect for all these new applications. So we've also made progress there, and we're pushing that forward as quickly as we can.
When we first spoke, James, obviously, back 2 years ago, obviously the market, we spoke about how there's a misconception what you guys are doing, and the main market was basically the porcelain part of it. And then we talked about, you know, what you've just mentioned, the nanotechnology and the concrete and things like that. From your point of view now going forward, obviously with 2 years of hindsight and where you guys are at, how much percentage do you think these sectors potentially will be? Obviously, your porcelain is a big one, but how do you see this panning out for you for Andromeda going forward?
Yes, it's a little bit hard to get a feel for that right now because we've got these new exciting areas, you know, like the concrete area, for example. This is something new that's never been done before, and it's something that has got true global attraction because every country in the world uses a serious amount of concrete, and here we got something that potentially adds a lot of benefits to concrete, but not a lot of cost. So that is a bit of an unknown now. So the good thing is for us that Australia is a very good testing ground for such a product because Australia has got very high concrete standards. If it meets the standards for Australia, it'll meet standards anywhere in the world. It's also a little bit detached from the rest of the world, so it's tucked away. So it means it's a good testing bed for it in the market. But there are also some global operators running here in Australia. So this is all hinging on how the commercial trials go. But if the commercial trials go well, and it looks like it's got really got legs, then that could start going at a much higher rate than we expected. So that's a little bit unknown, and it could end up being the main product that we actually produce as a company. So a little bit hard to know. I mean, at the moment, it's a safe strategy to just base our numbers purely on what we know we can sell into markets that are very mature and established and grow year on year. So our numbers for the baseline business in the ceramics, we can have very high confidence that we're going to hit those. Now the concrete is an unknown factor, but it's a real X factor, that one. It could take off dramatically. We just don't know quite yet. The nanotechnology is even more of an X factor because now we're talking about something that's worth potentially millions of dollars a ton. But again, it's new areas and new technologies that are sort of blue sky areas. What we do know is that we are getting in the carbon capture area, we've got a technical commercial solution there that seems to be working. So that could take off quickly as well. And the hydrogen area, the hydrogen area seems to be a major topic around the world now. Australia is particularly focused on the hydrogen as a new source of energy, as clean energy. So we are also pushing hard on that one because if we can make a breakthrough in carbon capture technology, and not just carbon capture, but capturing the carbon dioxide and converting it to a fuel, and sort of closing the circle in that environment, that's going to be a massive step forward for us. And also, if we can get something that's actually commercially proven to work for hydrogen storage and transport, which is at the moment, that seems to be the main Achilles heel of hydrogen, is how you actually store it and transport it safely and cheaply. So there's also a massive potential there. And these things normally you say, well, in an R&D environment, no, you're talking about probably 2 to 3 years work before you get maybe some intellectual property, and then another 2 or 3 years before you get some sort of commercialization happening. But there's so much pressure around the world now for these areas now in the environmental pressure, that both these areas they could accelerate very quickly, and they could happen a lot more quickly than anyone else realizes right now. And that's why we decided to pump ourselves a Minotaur. We decided to double our contribution towards that because we can see the opportunities that are now developing.
Yeah, I think with the storage of hydrogen, I'm probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I was already hearing sort of mature technology in terms of that space. I'm pretty sure by now that, like you said, I think the growth could be exponential next year or 2 years' time. You sort of never know. But it's interesting how when I go back to the point when we first start talking about things, that nanotechnology, that hydrogen, all those things felt so far away. That was 2 years ago. And, we're hearing more and more about the nanotechnology side of things, and how the HPA side, high purity alumina, how that's going to develop. What are you hearing from you talking to your, the researchers and things like that? What are their thoughts in terms of where this technology could sort of be commercial or everywhere in the space?
Yeah, I do talk to a lot of people in this area, and not just in the battery technology and the hydrogen technology, but also in the HPA space. So sort of get a good feel for how things are developing there. There does seem to be, there is a bit of a potential conflict between hydrogen and batteries, though, of course. So it remains to be seen what happens there, because now hydrogen technology, if that advances sufficiently, it could actually remove the need for a lot of batteries that are now being developed. So the good thing for us as Andromeda is that we got a foot in both camps there. Now we got a foot in the hydrogen camp and also one of the batteries. Now we're not just working on the batteries from the nanocarbon structure perspective, but we are also working towards getting some sort of HPA solution as well. So I think now during the course of this year, we will end up making big steps forward in battery technology from the nanocarbon side and also from the HPA side. But also I think that we've got some exciting things happening in hydrogen as well. So, I think you have to watch your space with Andromeda on the hydrogen side, because that could be something very exciting happening as well. Over the next first half this year, I think we can see some big breakthroughs there. But there's no doubt that all the pressure from all the governments around the world and now the major companies that are driving it as well, seem to be pushing those developments forward a lot more quickly than you'd expect. And if you get enough pressure, it can be done. We've seen with the vaccines for the COVID vaccines, if you get enough pressure and there's enough demand for it, then things can happen a lot more quickly than ever happened before. So I think the way we're going is, I think before the end of this year, I think that we will have made some big breakthroughs in those areas.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I guess, in some ways it's interesting in our conversation, a thought just came to me at what stage the company is. It's like all the halloysite kaolinite part is almost like has its own journeys on autopilot to February when you break ground, and we're spending a lot of time talking about your future. It's sort of it's a perfect representation of where the company is, I guess. In terms of going forward, do you see that is there going to be an increase in demand for kaolinite, halloysite, or do you think the market is stagnant in that sense, or slower?
It's the kaolin market globally is very mature market. No, it's been around for a very long time. It does grow, but grows slowly. It grows now 4 to 5% per year, but it's done that year on year for decades now, because it's used so widely in a lot of industrial applications and everyday applications. So you're using kaolin every day in all sorts of things. Then it's very unlikely that's going to change. It seems like it will just keep growing year on year. There'll be no dramatic increase unless there's a major breakthrough in some areas, which is very unlikely in the pure kaolin side, because it's been researched for decades in new applications. Now, when I first started in my career, I worked in a research facility with 300 scientists working on kaolin applications. So it's unlikely that there's going to be new things that are going to change that. I can't see anything happening exponentially to change that. But it will be very, very safe and slow but steady growth business. So our base business for the halloysite kaolin, we have got that factor, of course, that there's hardly anyone in the world can produce that now. So it means that we are filling a gap from existing producers who are dropping off gradually. So we have got a chance to step in there and fill that gap. But once we fill that gap into ceramics, then that will just grow as it has done before. At that same sort of rate, 4 to 5% per year, depending on what happens globally. But can't see any change in that at all. So that will just follow the trend of the normal kaolin business, and nothing too exciting there, but it will be some very stable, sound, nice baseline business, which according to our pre-feasibility study numbers are very attractive. But what we have in Andromeda, we have the halloysite factor, which is a nanotube factor, which means that we have once we've got that baseline, we have got this potential to grow into all these new exciting areas, which are these would potentially give us exponential growth. So we're talking about things like the concrete construction, some cementitious products. That could give us cementitious growth. That could give us exponential growth, because it's a whole new. We're starting from scratch here with a whole new application. These halloysite technologies, now if it takes off in carbon capture batteries or even water purification that we're working on, now there's going to be a global demand for these things. So that is also unknown, but it's starting from a very low baseline. So it means that there's a chance for exponential growth there as well. So I think what we've got to favor is that we've got this very steady, non-volatile market that we can supply into, where people actually want this material, and they've always wanted it. They wanted it for 1,000 years, and they still want it going forward. But it's actually in short supply in the world. So we've got that as our baseline. It means that we're in a very strong position there, and then to work on all these new applications. Anything else comes through, it's going to be just cream on top there. And the way we're going, it could be a lot more than just cream. It could be actually turn into our biggest business.
All right. I mean, in terms of, James, it's that I'm actually very happy we started talking way back when, you guys were at 4 cents and your market cap now is at 600 million, if I'm not mistaken, or thereabouts.
Yep.
For those newcomers, the guys have just woken up to the Andromeda story, and they look at, valuation and where you are and things like that. What would you say to them? Say, hey, to get them to buy your stock at what it is today, what would that value be for them? Well,
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's come a long way in a fairly short time now. When I joined the company, it was 0.4 cents a share. And it's now hovering around about 30 cents now. So it's been a spectacular rise, and we're not in production yet. So I think for us, I can see a lot of value ahead in the fact that once we're in production, and we're pumping this material out, we've always said that once we get into production and start making money, we aim to pay dividends. So that's something that we're looking at ahead. So it's always a reason to hold on to shares long term. But I'll also say that these new technologies that we have, the valuation now is just basically on what we have as in our pre-feasibility study, with a bit of upside for new technologies. But those new technologies really haven't come through fully yet. And I anticipate that there's going to be at least 1 or 2, maybe more of these will come through over the next few months, which means we'll have something really very exciting to add on top of what we've got. So a little bit hard to say, what value we're going to get to, but I think that once we start producing, there's going to be a re-rating there. But also once we get one of these new technologies established, saying if we get one of these new technologies established, we capture some IP and possibly any of these new areas, we start signing up customers. So we've got some binding offtake customers lined up. Once we start signing them, announcing we've got binding offtakes, then that's further de-risking of the project, and it will give people a lot more confidence. So I think there's still a lot of upside to come. So at this point in time, I would be saying, if in my situation, I wouldn't actually think about selling any shares at all. I would be just hanging on and thinking that Andromeda's got a long way to go yet.
Yeah. I guess, James, it's a fantastic story. I mean, it's so simple in some ways, and people overcomplicated everything. But in terms of, you're basically just a bulk commodity, in terms of what you guys do. And obviously, like you said, once the new, your sort of nanotechnology and things like that kicks in, where could the value be? It's sort of like a, how long is a piece of string kind of story. Look, James, fantastic. Thank you for your time, as well to viewers. Please feel free to send comments through. James is, I'm pretty well, he'll be happy to answer them. And, subscribe to the channel like everybody else, and, we'll keep you guys in touch. And James, again, thank you for your time. Keep safe.
Yeah,
and hopefully
thank you, Samso.
we'll do this in person soon.
Yeah, well, thank you, Samso. I hope to do it in person next time, and maybe some more exciting news from the world of Andromeda.
Yep. All right. Thank you.